welcome to Laird Wellness Live for this Thursday, May 19, 2022. We want to tell you the exact date because, first of all, Scott Laird, Jody Laird.
Good evening.
We've been looking at the news. Have you been looking at the news? What news have you been looking at? Because the stuff we're looking at tells us some pretty crazy stuff.
Right.
So today, yesterday really, it was revealed that the first case of monkeypox was in Massachusetts in the U.S. They have several cases in the U.K. And to our sister-in-law's point, it's been in the States for 20 years. What's the big deal? Good point. What's the big deal? The big deal is people are making a big deal out of it.
Yeah.
And just like we've seen with the flu, it's another flu. What's the big deal? Well, they give it a name. They go around the world saying this is the most dangerous thing in the world. Second of all, it's manufactured, this type of thing. You know what I'm talking about. That's how that whole thing blew up. So I'm thinking this is getting ready to blow up. I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong. But that's why I reposted what we did on February 3rd. We did a Laird Wellness Live on February 3rd about smallpox. Smallpox and monkeypox are very closely related. As you'll see, if you go to that post, you'll see that one of the news stories I posted for my sister-in-law was just to show her what's going on here. And the fact that monkeypox is out there, but certain countries are bringing out smallpox vaccines to treat monkeypox. Hold on a sec. This just started a couple of days ago,
right.
But now there's this big panic about a spread. And my question is this a new pandemic? I don't know.
A couple of things I was reading today. I did look to see exactly what you would do to treat it. Now, we found some natural ways to treat it, and we have since purchased those things. The pitcher plant out of
Sarcenia purpurea or something like that.
Basically out of Canada, Newfoundland, that area.
Oh, really? I didn't realize it was from there.
I think it's actually their somebody on the east coast of Canada. It's their actual flower.
Yeah, it's known as a pitcher plant.
Yeah,
pitcher plant.
But anyways,
that's what the
that.
That's what the native people used in 1860s to get rid of smallpox.
Right. And so there's a homeopathic medicine for that. But there's also the vaccine, which I read a lot about today from different websites like the CDC and the WHO. And then there has been a antiviral made in the last 3 to 4 years called TPOXX. TPOXX. And we asked our friend, who's a pharmacist, about it, and he didn't really know too much about it, hadn't heard much about it yet, and they don't even regularly carry it in their pharmacy. So those are the things that I found out today.
Yes, very interesting. What was really interesting was if you watch that video from February, you'll notice that there was a market forecast for smallpox medications to be going up between 2021 and 2027. And we said, why? Could this be why? I don't know. I hope I'm wrong. I hope this is all just conspiracy theory and not just conspiracy because, it's only a conspiracy until it's not. So let's hope it's just all conspiracy theory. Anyhow, we want to bring something else out to you, something completely different. This is totally out of left field for us. We just happened to come upon a special purchase of something we have never carried before. Jody's holding it there. Schmidt's deodorant. This is a deodorant that Jody uses.
Yeah.
And we found a special stock of it that we could purchase to offer it to you for a very low price, as a matter of fact. Walmart is even like $2 more than what we're selling it for. So that tells you the deal that we got on it. We thought, you know what? Let's pass the deal on to you. It's $5.95. It's the first item on our website. You will not find this anywhere for $5.95. You'll probably find it for $8, $9, $10.
Right.
I mean, the Schmidt's website itself sells it for close to $9. So if you want it, we've got it. I don't know how long we're going to have it, but we've got it for right now. We have a special purchase, so you can go online and get it right now. It's $5.95, first item on the store. So,
yeah. And
yes,
it works very well. So this is actually the only stuff I will use because I was a user of Secret deodorant for many years because
Secret antiperspirant.
Yeah, pet peeve. I don't like to smell bad. So obviously I want to smell good, but in a natural way. And this allows you to sweat. So that's also the good thing because those people, if you're taking pills to not sweat or you're getting Botox shots under the arms so that you don't sweat, that is not a good thing.
Right.
You want to sweat because if you don't sweat, you're like the animal, the pig. The pig doesn't sweat either. It keeps all its toxins inside. So if you're not sweating, you're keeping your toxins inside. So this
Right.
allows you to sweat, but it also gives you 24-hour odor protection, which I love. And this one in particular is my favorite. It smells like rose and vanilla. And I bought enough for myself to never have to buy deodorant again at full price.
Yep. Yep. So it's a good stuff. And you know us, we only carry the best of the best. If we find something better from another company, like if we're carrying a B12 and we find a better B12 somewhere, well, we'll switch it. We've never found a deodorant that we felt comfortable carrying before. This opportunity happened to come along, so we thought, hey, why not? So that is the only one, only kind we have. And there's, I think we have about 100 of them, something
right
like
now.
that. Yeah. Yeah, until people have been buying like 4 and 5 at a time. So keep
A couple
that in
of the
mind, too.
ingredients. The first ingredient is magnesium, which is what helps you not smell, right?
Yes. It neutralizes odor.
Coconut oil, arrowroot powder, sodium bicarbonate, caprylic acid, which again is from the coconut, natural fragrance, wax, perfume, fragrance. So that it is, it does have fragrance, but it works. Yes, it still allows you to sweat, but it allows you to smell good
Yes.
while you're sweating.
Not an antiperspirant, which is
Right.
what you never ever want to have. Okay, so
Shameless commercial plug.
that's okay. Sometimes we find something cool and we want to tell you about it. So
Well, this actually keeps us afloat. So this is our sponsor for today.
that is our sponsor. That's our only sponsor. Our only sponsor is you getting our stuff. Anyway, we want to tell you about something cool regarding cholesterol. Now, cholesterol has a lot of, it's been vilified. People think you have high cholesterol, you have big problems, and
You should go on a statin.
you go on a statin. And you saw the truth about cholesterol. Well, someone who has a lot to say about cholesterol is the guy who runs our blood test, and that is Dr. Tom Lewis. And he's writing a book, and a whole chapter is dedicated to cholesterol. We're going to read some of that from his book today, in addition to some other things that we found online. They're probably things you've never heard before. So we want to dispel some myths, first of all. And these are not very common myths. In fact, Dr. Lewis mentions in his book that the person who brought up the first 4 things we're going to show you here was actually, fired from the university he worked at for having these views. So, he was vilified and, cancel cultured even back then for seeing, but it's true. It's like cholesterol is not the villain we've been led to believe. And the reason why it is that villain, as you can imagine, is to sell statin drugs. And so why do they come up with new parameters on said levels? Is to sell more statins, because if enough people are not below that threshold, well, we better drop the threshold because we want to, prescribe this medication more. And it's ridiculous to bring your statins or bring your cholesterol down, and we're going to tell you why. And is it, just LDL we're talking about? No, we're talking about both of them. You don't want to have either one of them diminished because your body is using them for a reason. And we're going to tell you all those reasons in a sec here. But here is the first thing we want to dispel. Number 1, LDL, which is technically the bad cholesterol. We're going to get rid of that in a few minutes here. But for as you know it at this moment, the bad cholesterol and arterial plaque are not associated. Not one study has ever shown them to be associated. So where do we get this idea that LDL causes arterial plaque? Good question. That's why we want to dispel that myth. Here is the second thing we want to tell you. Number 2, high cholesterol is a weak factor, if at all, for CVD, which is cardiovascular disease. So people tell you, you have high cholesterol. That means you're going to have cardiovascular disease. You're going to have heart attacks and strokes and all this good stuff. No, that's not true at all.
I'm proof positive of that.
Yeah, indeed, right? Yeah, you're proof positive. So that's not the case at all. So that is another thing that is very wrong. And things we've learned that are not right. All right, so which would be wrong. Not right is wrong, right? Okay. I don't know what I'm doing. Anyway, it's third one. Family history of high LDL is not associated with cardiovascular disease. So just because you have high cholesterol in your family, it doesn't mean you're going to have problems with cardiovascular issues. And here is the real reason. Get this. Higher mortality with high LDL is due to clotting issues. It's not about the cholesterol. It's that your body has an abnormal way of clotting the blood. That's what you need to go after. the clotting factors and what that, and very simply, I mean, something I do every day, just because after I had COVID several months ago, I started taking this simple supplement because it breaks down clots in the body without thinning the blood. So a blood thinner, like baby aspirin or something like that, what that is actually doing is killing off some of the live blood cells in your blood. You don't want to kill off live blood. That doesn't sound like a very good idea. So what does the same type of thing, but doesn't go after the live stuff, only after the dead stuff, like clots and inflammation and tissue, arterial plaque, all that kind of thing, which, by the way, all these things have been shown to help with. Number one is serrapeptase. Serrapeptase is an enzyme that comes from the silkworm. It is the enzyme the silkworm secretes in order to escape its cocoon, which is made of dead protein. So this serrapeptase goes after dead proteins. That's why you take it on an empty stomach, so that if you have nothing in your stomach, it'll go straight through to your bloodstream and go after dead proteins. So
Keep going.
I'm sorry, I'm distracted by what you're seeing there. Anyway,
It's us.
It's us. I'm looking at a delay of myself. Anyway, so it gets rid of dead proteins, and so it doesn't go after live blood cells. And so that's why you take it on an empty stomach. If you take it on a full stomach and you have protein in there, it's going to dissolve the protein because it's a proteolytic enzyme. It gets rid of proteins. The other thing that I take along with serrapeptase on an empty stomach is something called nattokinase. And it's in a product that we don't carry it, but you can get it at lifeextension.com. And it's called VenoFlow. VenoFlow. And so that includes the nattokinase and some other things in there. But the nattokinase goes after the factors that create clotting. So serrapeptase goes after the clots that are already there. Nattokinase ensures that no more get formed. And apparently when you take them together, there's some preliminary evidence that shows that there is a synergistic effect. In other words, 1 + 1 = 3. It works a lot better when you take them together. So that's just something I do to mitigate that clotting factor. Now we're back onto cholesterol. So there are some cholesterol facts we want to bring out your way. Now these come from our friend Dr. David Jockers. He has drjockers.com, great resource for all kinds of things. He is on the very same page as we are, as Dr. Lewis is. We all think the same way, the right way. So we're going to show you a few of these things. Let's just read through these. These are interesting. So top left there, the Framingham heart study showed that people with a cholesterol lower than 200 suffer from 40% of heart attacks. Well, that's pretty much half and half. So like, what's the difference? I mean, that doesn't,
Well, yes, but right? What we see everybody's labs all the time. And if people have anything over 200, 201, you need a statin.
Right. Well, that's what the doctor says,
right?
Because at 201, LabCorp will put a flag there and say, "Oh, you're high," and that's all they tell you is high. So people see that and they panic, not knowing that that's not a big deal. In fact, it's a good thing. We like to see cholesterol totals between 200 and 260.
Right.
Yes, 200 to 260. Now, below that, there is clearly more to this problem than simply lowering cholesterol. Obviously, we've talked about clotting factors already. That's one thing. Top right, many people who have heart attacks are on cholesterol-lowering medications. Why? Because cholesterol-lowering medications, for one, will lower your magnesium levels. Magnesium levels help the heart work properly. Magnesium relaxes muscles while calcium contracts them. So as you can imagine, your heart is continually contracting and relaxing. So without magnesium to relax, it's almost like having a short circuit there where the calcium that's where you get atrial fibrillation. It's trying to contract and there's nothing to relax it. So yes, that could lead to a heart attack. So that's just one reason right there. And finally, on the bottom right, research shows that people that have a cholesterol lower than 180 are 3 times more likely to have a stroke. Wow. Now, I worked for an organization at one point. I won't say what name they are because you'll figure out what it is. But the person who headed up that organization taught a vegan diet. Mm-hmm. And if you've heard me talk before, you know what we're talking about. But anyhow, after 25 years of eating a vegan diet, which seemed like the most healthy diet you could be on. I mean, after all, it does reverse cancer. It reverses heart disease, diabetes, all kinds of things. There are lots of good things about a vegan diet. This founder, who was a very strict vegan, suddenly had a hemorrhagic stroke. Now, that's not a clotting stroke. A hemorrhagic stroke is one where the blood vessels just kind of give way and start bleeding. They start bleeding out. And so he had that in his brain. He was on the stage teaching. Some folks recognized that he was repeating himself, and they knew what was going on. So they called an ambulance. The ambulance driver basically took them home. His wife said, I don't want him going to the hospital. I don't want any of your drugs. We do things naturally here. They said, fine, but you better sign this paper because if we leave him here overnight at home, he's going to die. And so she basically nurtured him back to health using mainly juicing, carrot juice, celery juice, that kind of thing. And he's still living today. That was some 20 years ago, something like that.
At least 20 years ago.
Yeah, he is 87 years old now and still doing fine. So anyway, that may be the reason. Who knows? But I suspect that maybe just so many years of just really keeping the cholesterol down, could it have had an effect? We won't really ever know. But there is a lesson possibly to be learned there. So,
Yeah,
interesting.
Probably. I would love to see his cholesterol levels back in the day.
Yep. Yeah, that would have been really interesting.
He ate a very clean vegan diet.
He
not
did, yeah.
not a dirty vegan, very clean vegan.
Yeah.
So lots of vegetables.
Some interesting things to know as well is that cholesterol, I'm reading here, is a structural element in certain tissues, including the brain and nervous system. This is directly from Dr. Lewis's new book, by the way. Around 25% of the cholesterol in our bodies is found in the brain. Okay, interesting. So, does your brain need cholesterol? Yeah, that would stand to reason. In fact, high cholesterol levels are linked to better cognitive function in the elderly.
So why do we always say eat your fat, eat fat first?
Yep.
If you are
Think
not
fat
getting
first.
enough fat, good fats, your brain is going to
Not work properly.
not work properly, and you're gonna
And you might lose words.
And you're gonna lose words. Did I have my fat today? Yes.
I don't know. And second thing that Dr. Lewis mentions in his book, this is from a doctor of his. This is the doctor that was actually fired from the university for having different views on cholesterol. These are quotes from that doctor. He also said cholesterol is a transport molecule to shuttle fat-soluble nutrients into the cells to be used appropriately. How about that? Dr. Jockers actually says that as well. So you know that has caught on with a few people who have their heads screwed on straight. Thirdly, cholesterol is an essential building block for hormones, including progesterone. We're going to get more into this a little bit later when we talk about the thyroid, including progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, cortisol, the stress hormone. Going to talk more about that too, and vitamin D.
You know what makes sense to me about that?
What's that?
Is if you don't have enough fats and you eat a really non-nutrient diet, you know what usually happens? You start getting not well in your brain, and for instance, not only dementia and that kind of thing, but anxiety and depression if you don't have enough fats.
Right.
That's why when people do have anxiety and depression, right away we put them on cod liver oil in a high dose.
Yep. And that's why sugar is bad for the brain, because sugar and fat are opposites. You want less sugar, more fat. Yes.
Not enough fat dehydrates you.
Yeah, it does.
And your body cannot be dehydrated of fat. If it is, things go wrong.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Fourthly and finally, cholesterol is used by the body to make bile acids to help digest fats. How about that? So you actually need the cholesterol to digest the fats. It all ties together. Now, the most interesting thing that Dr. Lewis has in his book, spoiler alert here, by the way, this is one of the most profound things. He says it all the time, so it's not really a spoiler alert, but it makes so much sense. It just makes it hard to ignore. And that when the image you're going to see here on the screen here explains it even more. He says cholesterol is soap. What? What does he mean by that? Okay, so if you wash a dish, he gives this example all the time. If you wash a dish, like a greasy dish, in the sink with just water, nothing really happens, right? It's the grease just kind of stays there. It doesn't do anything.
Is greasy.
Right. So you add soap, and what happens? Oh, all of a sudden the grease is lifted away. You remember the old Palmolive commercials from the 1980s. They drop some palm olive into the water, and the grease goes, pew, kind of goes away. So what is happening there? So the soap molecule is actually drawing the fat into itself, and then the soap carries it away. So the soap becomes a vehicle for fats. That's what cholesterol is. We read earlier how that cholesterol is needed to bring the fats to your cell. Well, how is it going to get there? First of all, the blood in your body, blood is a water-based system. Well, oil and water, or fats and water, don't mix, do they? So you've got to have a vehicle something to get the fat around through this water-based blood system. Otherwise, nothing's going to get anywhere. And that's where cholesterol comes in. It is a soap. Take a look at this drawing. So on the left, you have cholesterol, the structure. You have the esterified cholesterol on the outside, water-soluble outer surface, and also I'm just going to let you look at it. Anyhow, so you look on the left there, and you see that the fat-loving inside, he says on the top left, cholesterol, which is like, right? So triglycerides, fat-soluble nutrients on the inside. On the right, take a look at that. Soap is the exact same thing. You have oils, fats, and grease being drawn into the outside, and you have a hydrophilic head on the outside. So this shows how cholesterol is just like, it literally is a soap. I mean, there you have it right there. You can see it right there in black and white. How interesting is that? So Dr. Lewis has a real good way of explaining that, I think. I mean, that just makes a whole lot of sense. And something else I use when I'm explaining the different types of cholesterol to people. So that's cholesterol in a nutshell, first of all. So, and then we have the two types of cholesterol that everyone is always fixated on. We have HDL and LDL. And everybody's like always, I can't remember which one's a good one, which one's a bad one, which one's supposed to be high or low, or okay. So I've got an easy way of explaining that. And I create a little graphic to explain to you what I explain to other folks when I do consultations with them. So here's how it works. Think of each blood cell as an airport. Okay? Now with that in mind, take a look at this. So coming to the airport are planes, and then taking off from the airport are more planes. So the planes coming into the airport, they're coming in low. Okay? LDL. That's where we get that from. So LDL brings nutrients low to your cells. So they are the planes landing. That's maybe another way to think about it, with another L there, some alliteration. This is the way I remember things, so hopefully this helps you too. And then, so the HDL will take things out high to your liver. So those are like the planes taking off. So that's the HDL. So they take toxins out of the cell back to the liver for processing. And then the whole process starts again. So you can imagine. Now LDL is not bad per se, unless you have a traffic jam at the airport. Imagine all these planes landing and nothing taking off. So if you have that situation, you got a traffic jam.
All right.
And that's bad for your cells. Nothing is getting out. This is why we need to concentrate on, like LDL, there's always, usually enough LDL coming in. It's the HDL we really need to look at, because we need to have those planes getting out of there. We need to clear the airport. We need to take things back to the liver. So that is why the concentration on HDL, and it's known as the good cholesterol, because it is actually taking bad stuff out of your cells. Now, why do we want to take the bad things out of the cells? Can the cells not handle that? Well, here's the thing. If LDL, which inherently is not bad, remember that, comes into the cell, but then it hangs around for too long, and it doesn't get picked up by the HDL plane and taken out, if the cargo, if you will, hangs out for too long at the airport, it starts to oxidize, starts to rust. Okay, so think about that. If you have one plane coming in, so let the LDL plane coming in, and it brings some very susceptible metal.
Like what? Like, tell the people what would raise your LDL and what would raise your HDL.
Well, we're going to get into that later.
Are we going to, for sure?
Yeah, we're going to
because
get
everybody
that later.
wants to know what to eat, and what not to eat, what makes it high, okay.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
We're getting there.
Go.
I did the notes. Jody hasn't seen them yet, so that's why she doesn't trust me. Anyway, so you have the LDL coming in. So you've got, say, an old car in that plane, and it sits there at the airport that's right by the ocean. And of course, there's a lot of salt action going on, and that car is going to rust if we don't get it out of there. That's what happens to the cholesterol, or the cholesterol brings the LDL, or anyway, you've got oxidized cholesterol happening there, which is like the rusting car. If you don't get it out of there, you've got to keep the cholesterol moving. So otherwise, you get what happens? What's so bad about oxidized cholesterol? That's what causes disease. That's what causes the problems. That's where LDL becomes bad, only if it becomes oxidized. So we don't want to have that.
But why does it become oxidized?
Just because it hangs around too long. We're not going to
Why
get
does
into
it
those.
hang around?
Because you don't have enough HDL to pull it out.
Okay, so it's
So
more
that's
of a,
why-
it's more of a ratio
Yeah,
thing.
that's exactly what we're going to get into. And strangely enough, we were going to tell you a few more things here about it before we get to that. Actually, that's our next slide. Is how interesting is that? So it produces sex hormones. LDL does. So it's not bad. It's not bad inherently. It produces sex hormones, new cell membranes, and it brings fat-soluble nutrients. Remember, we can't get fat-soluble nutrients around the body without LDL. It brings vitamin A, D, E, and K, and it helps them to deal with helps you to deal with oxidative stress, and helps the cells to function properly. How about that?
Yeah.
Okay. So now lowering LDL, get this, is well known as a way to increase infection. So if we have any threats coming our way, i.e. monkeypox, smallpox, COVID, etc., whatever, we need to have enough LDL. Did you know that? Wow, that's interesting, huh?
Mm-hmm.
And cholesterol is protective to our bodies against all viruses and infectious species. So we need to have cholesterol to move things around, because you can imagine, if we don't have things moving around, like we say, blood flow is everything. Whether it's moving cholesterol around or other nutrients around, if you don't have good blood flow, you're just not going to be healthy, period.
Right.
That's why we need to look after blood flow, number one. Also, when you lose weight, fat is released into the bloodstream. Dr. Lewis taught me this one. I never thought about this. So when fat is released into the bloodstream, you've got more triglycerides. So in order to get rid of that, you've got to have LDL capture that and bring it to the cells for energy, and then HDL goes and takes it out. So what happens when people lose weight? What happens? You burn the fat. Okay, well, when you burn fat, how does it burn? What happens? Well, it gets released into the bloodstream, and there's toxins in that fat, right? So your body's got to take care of it. And so if there's more of this being released into the body, more LDL is needed to transport it to the cells, right? So if you get a blood test while you're losing weight and it shows increased LDL, don't panic. That's normal. Your body is responding to what you are doing. It's increasing the amount of LDL to get rid of those extra triglycerides you are releasing from burning the fat. So don't worry about it. Now, more cholesterol is required to take care of stress. So if you have a lot of stress at work and they're saying, oh, you must, your LDL is too high, we need to put you on a statin. Well, is your cholesterol high because you're stressed at work? Maybe that's why. So don't worry about the LDL. The LDL isn't the problem. It's a symptom. So by just going after the LDL, you're concentrating on the symptom of being stressed rather than taking care of the stress,
Right.
which would be the root cause. Take care of the stress, the LDL will come down because your body doesn't need to create as much, because you're not creating as much cortisol, and it's taking all those things away.
Now, granted, some LDLs are going to be really high. Like, what if your LDL is 300 and your HDL is non-existent?
Well, then we need to look for what's the cause?
Right.
We look at that and go, that's interesting. We don't go, oh my God, we got to bring that down. No.
Well, first thing
It's
I
what's
say,
the cause?
Yeah, first thing I do is give me a 3-day food diet.
Yep.
3-day food log, and let's see where your HDL and LDL are coming from.
Now, in your situation, Jody, we're going to talk about this in a second here, is that people with hypothyroid also have higher LDL. And there again, it's if you fix the thyroid, you'll bring down the LDL, and that's easier said than done. But anyway, that's the cause, though. Again, you don't go after the cholesterol. Don't worry about the cholesterol. You go after what's
You're right.
causing it.
Funny story. I was going to do a test a couple of months ago just to see where my HDL and LDL was. I was like, I would like to bring my total cholesterol down just a little bit, just, to get under a certain number. And so I just stopped doing the fatted coffees in the morning. That's the only thing I changed, because in my fatted coffee I have coconut oil, butter, and MCT oil. But I just stopped doing them. So, okay, that's 3 little pieces of fat a day that I eat that I'm just going to stop doing. Well, lo and behold, my total cholesterol did come down about 8 points. But guess where it came from? My good cholesterol. Because those 3 fats are good. So my total cholesterol came down, but it all came from the good cholesterol.
And that's another thing Dr. Lewis says. Well, he just kind of sits there and thinks. It's one of those things things that make you go, I think a song said a little while ago.
A
long time ago. If we're so concerned about a cholesterol level, why are we trying to bring one up?
Because then what?
That's interesting.
What happens when
it's
you
gonna
bring
go
up? What happens when you eat more avocados and MCT oil and you're doing fantastic? You bring your HDL up. Awesome! I've just brought my HDL up 8 points. Well, guess what? You also just brought your total cholesterol over 200. You need a statin.
And what most people don't realize is that there's another component to the total cholesterol reading. And if you've had a lot of these tests done, you might know this, but triglycerides is 20% of that number. Right. So that's the more important number. Remember we said that like fats and sugars are kind of opposite? So remember, like your body, when we teach people about diet, your body runs on 2 fuels. It's kind of like a hybrid car, electric and gas. It's sugar and fat. You want to be able to run on fat. It's a much cleaner burning fuel. So how do you do that? You eat more fat, the sugars will come down, and those are your triglycerides. So there you go. You'll bring down the triglycerides, maybe the HDL and LDL will come up, and now you have a good ratio. And Jody brought up a good point a few minutes ago. It's all about the ratio. It's not about bringing it down to a level. I mean, when you see your cholesterol going up past 300, you start to get scared, and when your number started coming up, that's where you went, I got to lower that. It's an automatic thing because of what we learned, right? I just got to bring it down. But now we know that's not the way to go.
Yeah, so that number that you're talking about, your
total cholesterol.
No, the sugar versus the
triglycerides
is the AIP number, is it not?
Yeah.
And that is a number that we calculate when we do our blood tests. That is not a number too many people do at all. But that number is a lot more important than the total cholesterol.
It is.
As well as your CRP. And both of those numbers for me are pretty much next to nil.
Yep.
That means my vessels look fantastic. Yeah, I may have a higher number than 200 for cholesterol, but my vessels and my sugars are fantastic. So I am not in any danger at all.
Right. Now, another thing that will bring up cholesterol, strangely enough, is your carb intake. Too many carbohydrates will increase cholesterol. Now, how many people are eating burgers every day and doing a bad diet, and it's from all the carbohydrates they're doing? And then the doctor puts them on a statin.
Not to mention the bad oils in the carbohydrates.
Right.
What do they make bread with nowadays, and what do they make chicken McNuggets with? Soybean oil, canola oil, all those things are oils, but they're not the good oils that feed the brain.
Right, and they're bad oils because what are they using typically when they're making those things? A lot of wheat, right? Wheat flour and that stuff, like to make the breading and all this kind of thing. Well, that doesn't have any oils in it because they stripped it all out when they're processing the flour. That's why they got to add other oils in, and they're adding the wrong ones in, of course. But anyway, that's a whole other kettle of fish we can get into some other time. Now, cholesterol levels, as we've been talking about here, are a result of your environment. So the stress you're under, the foods you're eating, all these other things, it's not usually something inherent. There is a familial history of cholesterol, but again, that is not indicative of heart attacks and strokes. It's usually a clotting factor, as we talked about earlier,
and,
right?
And, apparently, I do have familial history with high cholesterol. My dad has high cholesterol. My grandfather had high cholesterol. My great-grandfather. But you can, even though my number is a little bit high, my other numbers, like my AIP and my triglycerides and my sugars, are all low.
Right. And to that point, your grandfather lived to be 87?
85-ish,
86? And even then, it wasn't anything to do with cholesterol that he perished
And
from.
my great-grandfather didn't live a very long life. I think it was like 47, but he also smoked.
Aha, there you go.
So
does
you
that
weigh those things?
Right. So was it the cholesterol at all? No, it doesn't look like it.
And he did die of a heart attack, I believe.
Now here are those ratios Jody was talking about. So what is an optimal range for the lipid profile? So total cholesterol 180 to 300. Yeah, I mean, there you go. We say 200 to 260. This range is actually from Dr. Jockers. This is what he says. So he's pretty much in line with what we say.
Yeah.
And look at what he says below here. The test will flag it as high if it is over 200, but we aren't concerned about it if the ratios are in range. That is what matters. LDL to HDL ratio. You want it 3 to 1 or less. 2 to 1 is great. And to be fair, when Dr. Lewis looks at your cholesterol, he's not even considering some of these ratios. I mean, or is he?
No,
Not really.
He mostly looks at the AIP numbers, so
Yeah.
the 20% triglycerides. To
Right.
the
So
total
there, you
cholesterol.
don't want that any more than 2 to 1. 1 to 1 is great, by the way, is what Dr. Jocker's saying. I think we would agree with that. So there in the blue underneath, it says triglycerides should be under 100 and ideally right around the same number as HDL. Oh, okay, there you go. That's a good rule of thumb. Or in the 40 to 80 range. Typically, we like to see HDL of over 50 when we're doing your blood test. If these ratios are in order, it is a sign that the LDL particles are the larger fluffy types that are less prone to oxidation.
Right, because now that's a whole
Now.
other kettle of fish as well.
Yes.
There are different particles within LDL, and there are some tests like the Boston Heart test and that kind of thing that can measure exactly which size your particles are in your LDL. Are they big? Are they small? And I was thinking of doing this test just for fun.
For fun.
Yeah, because I like doing tests.
Okay. So
Just to see, because I want to see what my particle sizes of my LDL are.
now particle size. So if you have the small particle, like you were saying, the small particle size is what you don't want. That's the oxidized cholesterol is what that is. And that's what causes all the problems. And you were saying, where does it come from? So we're going to talk about that now. So that comes from another L word that you can remember. If you want LDL that's healthy, don't be lazy. Physical activity will prevent those particles from sitting around, because if you're active, what happens? You increase HDL. If you increase HDL, you're putting that rusted old car into the plane that's taking off in the HDL, right? So that keeps things moving. So again, blood flow is everything. How do you get blood flow? Move. That's what we need to do. And in fact, when we counsel people with our Biologic Blueprint program, they can do all the right diet, all the right supplements, all they want. But if they're not combining it with regular exercise to get the blood moving, it doesn't work nearly as well, if at all.
Then you'd be like what my daughter calls me, skinny fat.
Skinny fat. Yeah, we gotta use
It's not a very good term, but I'll take it over fat.
But that's what it does. And the LDL can be elevated in people with low thyroid as well. That's another thing we wanted to bring up here, hypothyroidism. Because, get this, T3 helps I'm trying to read this from Dr. Lewis's book here down again here. T3 helps sensitize the LDL receptor in the cell membrane. So what does that mean? If T3 is lower, the body will create more HDL or LDL. So again, it has nothing to do with the cholesterol. What we need to do is correct that T3, T4 mechanism in the thyroid, which is not just the thyroid. It involves the liver. Sometimes it can involve the vagus nerve and the neck. There's all kinds of components to it. And quite honestly, I don't think anybody really has all this figured out, but we're figuring out more and more and more. And this is just another piece of the puzzle.
Does it also involve the gut?
Of course it involves the gut, yes. And in fact, that's what you were told to correct mostly for your thyroid. And it has helped some.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I'm not on any thyroid meds right now.
You are taking a desiccated thyroid, beef thyroid.
Yes.
Right? Okay. And that is just a natural, organic beef thyroid is all it is. So yeah, isn't that interesting? So again, you don't go after the cholesterol. You go after what's causing the cholesterol. Remember, high cholesterol is due to environmental factors. There's something pushing the HDL higher. Don't push down the HDL, or pardon me, the LDL, any of the cholesterol, as a matter of fact. That's just putting a Band-Aid on the situation. You're not going after what's causing the injury. You need to investigate that. That's why we need to do blood tests.
Taking a statin is putting a Band-Aid
Oh,
on
gosh.
it, and then giving you so many different side effects.
Yeah, that's just putting blinders over your eyes is really what that is.
And I'll tell you, I've said this many times, and I say it to people who call me all day, every day. I look at hundreds of labs, and 95% of people have a flag on their total cholesterol.
But
95%
but they don't need to worry about it.
Are over 200. And it's funny because I see it, and I go, huh. But then when I see somebody who doesn't have a flag and I look at it and their total cholesterol is 160, I go, ooh, I better tell Dr. Lewis, because that is not good.
Yep, exactly. So, LDL stands for laziness. HDL, maybe high intensity. You could say that, I guess.
So, I always look at it this way, but that's when I thought that LDL was bad and you can't have any and it's really, really bad, I used to think, well, HDL is heaven and LDL is low, like,
to the other place.
like HE double L. But
That's a good way
it's
too.
not really that accurate.
Right, and it's about ratios, which take a look at this. So what are the factors that cause poor cholesterol and lipid ratios? Well, those are a poor diet, a sedentary lifestyle, there's that laziness coming out again, chronic stress, yeah, we all feel that sometimes, right? Insulin resistance from eating too many bad carbs and that kind of thing, and too much sugar in the blood, hypothyroidism, which we covered, lack of sunshine, there's one. Vitamin D is called cholecalciferol. It involves cholesterol and calcium, just from the name, cholecalciferol. So if you're not getting in the sun, what can happen is the cholesterol raises up and creates this imbalance. But if you get in the sun, your body's going to use some of that cholesterol in the production of vitamin D from exposure to the sun.
Yeah.
So that's why you need to get out in the sun.
You skipped food sensitivities.
Yes, food sensitivities, we need to look at those as well. That's interesting. That causes poor ratios.
Well, and for instance, if you are gluten sensitive, I mean, that's another whole bottle.
It's the whole gut thing you were talking about,
Yeah.
right?
It's just things are not going to work well. And how do you know if you're sensitive to gluten? Well, go off of gluten for 2 weeks and then eat some and see if you get a headache within 3 days, or body aches, or muscle aches, or super, super tired, or a runny nose.
Yep.
Then you'll know.
Poor sleep and sleep apnea can also cause this. Sluggish liver and bile flow. So again, a good diet and exercise will correct most of this stuff. Smoking and heavy alcohol use, there you go with some more environmental factors. Now, here are some strategies to improve the cholesterol and lipid ratios. So, anti-inflammatory nutrition plan. That's what we do for you with the Biologic Blueprint program. And even just our blood tests, which we'll show you in a minute, we can give you a 1-hour consult on that and just get you started. Maybe that's enough. Intermittent fasting. So important. And we won't explain that tonight, but maybe we need to do a whole show on intermittent fasting, what that's all about.
I agree.
Regular exercise. We talked again there about getting moving. Watch for food sensitivities. Don't just ignore them going, oh yeah, I can't eat tomatoes, or I can't eat salsa. Well, wait a minute, why? What's going on?
And not only that, you may not actually be allergic to tomatoes or gluten. It just may be your gut that is not assimilating everything correctly.
Right. And some people who are allergic to everything, that's not really a thing. That means your gut is just not working right. You're not allergic to all those things. That's nearly impossible. Another thing you can do is support your thyroid health. And like we said, sometimes that's a long haul. Jody's been at it for many years and we haven't figured it out yet, but we're getting there. Reduce your stress, get regular sun exposure, optimize your sleep habits, and support liver health and bile flow. So there you go. Those are basically all the things that cause it. Just reverse them. That's usually the thing that helps, is your body will self-correct. You have an amazing self-healing body, the Hallelujah Diet used to tell me. And I worked for them for many years, and they are... they got a lot of things right, and that was one of them. You have an amazing self-healing body that God created, and just by changing your diet, stopping the dumb things, starting to do more smart things, things will correct. I mean, that's just the way it is. And stopping to do some of the dumb things that the world has, thrown at us, like eating the fast food and things like that. Anything man-made.
Get back to the basics and back,
right?
Back to local.
Yep, exactly. And that is going to help correct most things. Just want to make sure we didn't miss anything here. No, I think we covered everything. So let's get into how can you correct some of these things. If you have high cholesterol, never mind anything else, how can we help you? Well, let's find out. Do a half-hour call with me. Go right there at lairdwellness.com/blueprint, and you can book a time at that website and find a little bit more about what we do. It's on the left-hand side. You can read it there. And just pick a time. It's free. 30 minutes. We'll talk all about it. You can ask all the questions you want, and we can figure out if this is something you want to do. And maybe you don't want to do a 6-week program or a 12-week program like we do. You can just start with the blood test. In fact, we've got a kitchen table over here where we line up everybody's blood test that is in transition and waiting for an appointment and that kind of thing. We got about 10 people lined up waiting to do the blood test with us. And some of them have already gone to get their blood done, and they've done the questionnaire that we give them and all this good stuff. So between that questionnaire and the blood panel and the 1 hour consult and us talking, we can usually figure out a lot of stuff, even in just that 1 hour. And then what some people are doing is they take that, and then 3 months or 6 months later, they do it again. And they see the difference. And some of the differences we've seen, oh my gosh, people like reducing their heart attack risk from 50% to 7%, that type of stuff. Just in 3 months of changing their lifestyle from things they just didn't know.
Yeah, and it's all color coded too. The reports that you're going to get, which are on that.
Yeah, let's show you that. Here it is here. There it is right there. It's right here.
Yeah,
Yep.
it is an amazing report. But you've got a consult coming up tomorrow that is going to be eye-opening for you, because some of his markers were blood red. That means, way too high.
Right.
And they've all come down. And it's only been like 3 to 4 months since he tested before.
Wow.
And he took your advice, and now he's coming back retesting,
Oh, I'd love
and
to see
his
that.
numbers have completely changed.
Awesome.
So
Well,
that's
Jody
awesome.
sees this before I do, because
I
she
do.
does all the calls with folks. But if you want to take advantage of this and you want to skip that half-hour call, you just want to say, nope, this is for me. I like this idea. You can go to lairdwellness.com. You'll see this picture, this Find Hidden Health Risks. Just click on that, and then you'll have 2 options, as you can see there in the gray box: 55 biomarkers, which includes everything we're talking about, or 55 biomarkers plus some spike protein risk. This is, how has your blood reacted to COVID? Or maybe you had to get the shot, or maybe you haven't had either the shot or COVID. You just want to see what your risk would be if something like that came your way. It's a good way to see what is affecting your blood. So there's 2 choices there. One is 319, the other one is 445.
Yeah, because in fact, in the 55 plus the spike protein, there's one specific marker that is actually quite expensive by itself, but because it's in that package, it's affordable. It's the D-dimer.
Yep.
And that is one really special marker that tells you basically your clotting risk, how sticky and
see,
thick your blood is.
That is really important for what we talked about tonight, right? So if you have a familial risk of high cholesterol, maybe it's your blood clotting too much, and maybe there's something we can do about that instead of looking after the cholesterol numbers, just trying to push that down, because by what we saw tonight, maybe that's not going to work. So look at what is happening. Blood flow. Remember, we said blood flow is everything, to your point, Jody. That's why maybe the clotting D-dimer is so expensive, because it's so important. But anyway, speaking of expensive, so that test that you're seeing there, some people call us and say, so the 319, that includes a consult? Because if you do a consult like this with somebody, usually the consult itself is $250.
Right.
And that test, I visited with a chiropractor friend of mine one lunchtime, and I showed him what we were doing, and he goes, how much are you charging for that? I said, about $300. He goes, how are you doing that? And I didn't know. I said, what do you mean? He said, if someone walks into a LabCorp and wants those tests that you're showing me, they're going to pay $1,000. And I said, wow, really? And the reason why we can get, now I found out why it is so much cheaper, is because Dr. Lewis does this a whole lot with folks and has for many, many years. So LabCorp gives him a volume discount. And you get to take advantage of it with us because we're working with them. So there you go. So you get the consult with me. It's a whole hour. Now, the free one that we talked about is a half hour, just to see if it works for you. But the consult with the blood test is a whole hour, going through every single marker with a fine-tooth comb, asking questions. And that's, like I said, by the end of that conversation, you and I are going to figure out what's going on. And you can take it from there, or you can do some coaching with us
Plus,
after
you
that.
also get the chronic disease assessment, which is a 120-question
Yep.
questionnaire that you fill out, kind of giving us another piece of the puzzle. Like, for instance, how much sun do you get? Are you on a vitamin D supplement? What's your family history? So we can put those things together, and both of those things make a puzzle.
Yep, exactly. Great stuff. All right, so thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please talk to us at info@lairdwellness.com. That's info@lairdwellness.com. And again, if we see anything in the news that we think you should know about, keep an eye on our Facebook page. We will put it there among other places. And hopefully we will see you on our blood panels. We'd love to take care of you and help you figure some things out. Maybe you've got high cholesterol. Let's figure out what the cause is and not go after the symptom, okay? All right, have a good week. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Take care.